Hello everyone, I'm Aida Balsano. I'm a National Program Leader with the Division of Family and Consumer Sciences at the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, the United States Department of Agriculture. One of my roles at NIFA is to provide oversight and leadership at the federal level for the Youth Farm Safety, Education and Certification Competitive Grants Program. I'm glad to be able to join today's plenary session and appreciate the opportunity to provide a bit of a background on NIFA's Youth Farm Safety Education and Certification Program. Since the early 1970s, significant changes in agricultural production and in the agricultural workforce, as well as the high number of incidents of injuries and deaths associated with agricultural employment, have led to collaboration between the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the U.S. Department of Labor on issues of youth farm labor and youth farm safety. Over the years, the two departments sought to review the restrictions concerning youth employment in hazardous agricultural jobs, to develop appropriate farm safety training for youth, and to revitalize youth farm safety certification process. In 2001, President's budget request included a line item that enabled USDA to establish a funding program in the area of youth farm safety. The initial priority was to align youth vocational agricultural program curricula with youth agricultural safety and health standards. Specifically, the program was to address the shortage of quality safety training materials that could supplement and enhance the training component of the Hazardous Occupations Order for Agriculture. The funding introduced in 2001 was appropriated through Smith-Lever 3D under the budget line titled Youth Farm Safety Education and Certification Program. The first project funded in 2001 through the Youth Farm Safety Education and Certification Program was National Safe Tractor and Machinery Operating Program, and the project started by creating a national steering committee whose role was to provide guidance in the execution of the project goals. It was under the recommendation of this national steering committee that an additional title for the Youth Farm Safety Program was adopted. It was Hazardous Occupation Safety Training for Agriculture, known as HOSTA. This new or additional title was adopted in order to better reflect program's emphasis on certification, standards, curricula, and testing in youth farm safety. Youth Farm Safety Education and Certification Program, or in those initial years, HOSTA program, was and still is structured as a competitive grant opportunity, with land-grant colleges and universities and cooperative extension eligible to apply for funding as lead institutions. The overall program priorities included supporting current hazardous occupation orders for agriculture, conducting studies to support policy and program development, and developing programs to address special needs. I mentioned earlier the National Steering Committee, which introduced the title HOSTA. It is worth noting that members of the HOSTA National Steering Committee were selected by NIFA, back then known as Cooperative State Research Education Extension Services, or CSRES. The committee included experts in youth farm safety, stakeholder organizations, and federal agency representatives with related programs. HOSTA grant recipients could not be members of the steering committee. Members were expected to annually attend a one-day meeting of grant recipients, and during such meetings, grant recipients would brief members of the National Steering Committee on currently funded project objectives and accomplishments. The committee would then make recommendations to CSRES on future HOSTA program priorities. By 2008, 14 awards were made, ranging from 2 to 4 years of funding per award. The figure shown here provides a schematic of the projects funded through the Youth Farm Safety Education Certification Program in the first 7 years of the program. On the left side of the figure are HOSTA-type projects related specifically to certification. And on the right side of the figure are projects that were related to general youth farm safety. Overall, projects focused on eliminating regional differences in certification curricula and testing procedures, curriculum development, development of a national tracking and certification database, development of materials and training methods to address knowledge, ethnic and cultural differences of youth, identification of skills required for agriculturally related tasks, development and implementation of model certification standards, instructor training, and programs for minority or underserved populations. Also, 2 complete curricula were developed, one from the Pennsylvania State University and one from Purdue University. Both curricula are available online at www.agsafetyforyouth.info website. These curricula are based on core competencies required to operate agricultural machinery safely, and the core competencies addressed were identified by agricultural safety experts. In fiscal year 2008, Ag Appropriations Report included a congressional directive regarding agricultural injuries and fatalities to minors. Congressional committee directed at that time the Secretary of USDA to develop, in collaboration with the Secretary of Labor, a plan to address injuries and deaths of minors in agriculture and to submit the plan to the committee. In November of 2008, a report by USDA and Department of Labor identified specific joint activities and actions that USDA and DOL participated in to address injuries and fatalities to minors in agriculture. And you see them briefly listed here. USDA's role, for example, focused on updating and assessing curricula, testing procedures, and certification means. It focused on stakeholder involvement and further program development. DOL's focus was more on review, revisions, and enforcement of agricultural youth employment federal regulations, and also on collaborations with other agencies. Then in 2011, Department of Labor put out a notice of proposed changes to child labor rule. Per recommendations from DOL and NIOSH at HHS, the proposed changes focused on bringing agricultural child labor regulations in line with more stringent regulations for employing children in non-agricultural jobs. Some of proposed changes called for prohibiting children younger than 16 from operating power-driven equipment and those under the age of 18 from working with livestock. Changes also proposed that children under 16 or 18 years old be prohibited from doing farm work for anyone other than their parents. It is worth noting that during the 2011 meeting of the Youth Farm Safety Education Certification Project Directors, implications of DOL child labor and agricultural regulation for future youth farm safety education certifications was discussed. In April 2012, Obama administration made a decision to withdraw the proposed regulation. Department of Labor reported at the time that the decision was made in response to thousands of comments expressing concerns about the effects of the proposed rule on small family-owned farms. Focus was now placed exclusively on educational programs and curricula that reduce accidents to youth workers and that promote safety. In December of 2012, then, NIFA held stakeholder listening session for the Youth Farm Safety Education Certification Program. And the input received during that stakeholder listening session was used to develop fiscal year 2013 requests for applications for the Youth Farm Safety Education Certification Program. In fiscal year 2013, NIFA funded the SAFE project. It is a 2-year multi-state project, as you know, funded at $300,000 per year for a total of $600,000. The project brought together experts from Penn State University, The Ohio State University, University of Kentucky, Utah State University, and CareerSafe. Major objectives of the SAFE project are to identify existing safety resources, to determine alignment of those education resources to national standards, and to organize the materials in a single sustainable and accessible clearinghouse. I hope this brief background about the Youth Farm Safety Education and Certification Program was helpful. Should you have any questions about the Youth Farm Safety Education and Certification Program at NIFA, I encourage you to get in contact with me. My email address is shown here. It is abalsano@nifa.usda.gov. My office phone number is 202-720-4436. Thank you.